Good afternoon, Ms. Mogwera.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice.
How are you?
I'm well under the circumstances, and how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. When I saw the same name, I checked whether this is the same Rose Mogwera who was, I think you worked in the library or something.
Yes,
Is it not so?
I was once your librarian, Chief Justice. At that time, you were a state advocate.
Yes. Well, now you have a B.Juris LLB and Master of Laws degrees.
Yes, Chief Justice.
You started off as, after becoming a legal admin officer, you became a prosecutor for what, about 4 or 5 years?
Yes, Chief Justice.
And for how many years have you been a magistrate? If you combine district court magistracy and regional court magistracy?
I think this is my 21st year.
21st year.
Yes, Chief Justice.
And for how long did you act as a judge?
I have been acting as a judge intermittently from 2011. I think I had a stint in 2011 and in 2012. Thereafter, there was a break, and I think I started again around 2019. And I had
If you bring it down to weeks or months, how long would you say you have acted for?
Approximately 30 weeks, Chief Justice.
And I take it that you consider yourself to be ready, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
Yes, I think so, Chief Justice.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, let me have the names of those who have questions for Ms. Mogwera.
Akwanisha, Nyambi,
Thing,
Arnold,
Schlemmer. Jenny Kane.
There's a colleague almost at the same time with Advocate Kane.
It was
who
Tepeche.
Okay, all right. So it's Prof. Advocate Kane and then Commissioner Tsepe in that order.
Thank you, CJ.
I didn't leave out anybody there.
Baba,
Okay.
you got my name, CJ?
I do, Honorable Baba.
Thank you so much.
And Maya, CJ.
Okay, President. Judge President, over to you.
thank you, Chief Justice. Ms. Mogwera, can I just get clarity? For how many weeks have you acted?
If my calculations are right, around 30 weeks.
Yes. And in KwaZulu-Natal, this was mostly in Pietermaritzburg, if I.
Mainly, I have never acted in Durban,
Yes.
JP.
And in Maritzburg, your duties was by and large again in the criminal courts, if I understand.
It was crime,
Yes.
JP, say for the two stints, 2020 and 2021.
You did civil.
I did civil motion court mostly.
Did you ever complete a civil trial? I know you did many criminal trials.
The only trial in that I'm busy with now is a divorce trial.
No, because I had gone through your papers you submitted and I don't see a civil judgment. Did you submit a judgment for any?
I think I submitted a civil appeal.
Yes, but
I did not submit a civil judgment.
so did you ever complete a civil trial?
Not in the High Court, JP.
So most of your trial work was confined to criminal work
To crime, but I've been doing civil work since 2010 in the regional court.
in the regional court. And do you find it any different, regional court civil work and Well, I know that you have been allocated some civil duties in Maritzburg because I told him to give it to you. Do you find any difference?
Speaking from the view of motion court,
Yes.
I realized that the files are many and they are voluminous. They require a lot of reading. And the cases are a bit complex. There were some matters that I met for the first time in the High Court that we do not deal with in the regional court. In the unopposed motion, like I did provisional liquidations, insolvencies,
Yes. Just-
and but I think the complexity and the volume of the work, that's where the difference is. Otherwise, I realized that the rules are almost very similar to the rules that we apply in the regional court.
Well, what I want to know is the volume of work. It's true. In Maritzburg, they'll tell you it's not as voluminous as Durban, but there is quite a bit of work in Maritzburg. Did you cope quite well with what was assigned to you in the civil court?
I'd like to believe so, Chief JP, because I would, I heard that some acting judges would take forever in the motion court.
Yes.
I could deal with the role within unopposed motion within around 2 hours. I would be done.
Yes.
I think it all depends on preparation, reading and understanding what is in the file, what the issues are, and preparing adequately. I think in 2019, in both stints, I could even give extempore judgments in opposed motion.
Oh, did you give any extempore judgments in opposed motions?
I did I did, JP.
What were your main challenges with the work that you were given in the High Court?
Like I've indicated, mainly, I noticed that being in the High Court would require one to live a life of a recluse because you are confined to your chambers. You do a lot of reading, especially when you are doing civil work, and you're expected to do a lot of preparations. Even on weekends, you take a lot of work home to read, go through the files and adequately prepare for court. So the challenge is that I would say it's just the amount of work that is there.
And you
But
think,
I'm very grateful because I'm one person who's got this personality of approaching people and asking for help. And I'm grateful to the judges who are always very willing to help. And I have benefited a lot from just the two stints that I had to do motion court.
you think you can adequately cope with the workload?
I believe so, JP.
And you don't think you might have a slight disadvantage with not having actually experienced the Durban High Court as such?
No, I don't think so. The thing with me, I am a fast learner and I do not struggle to adapt. In fact, I enjoy challenges. I love things that challenge me to push myself more.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Judge President. MEC.
Thanks, CJ, and good afternoon, Ms. Mogwera.
Good afternoon, sir.
Well, one of the problems that we face as society is the issue of gender-based violence and femicide. And in the course of the public debate, courts also get to be blamed for being too lenient on the perpetrators. and therefore victims finding it difficult to feel justice being served. So we'll find the perpetrator, some of them caught red-handed out on bail immediately, and then the case doesn't move. Other cases don't move at all. You have police blaming the NPA and the courts and the other way around. So do you think that criticism is justified? If so, what is it that can be done to ensure that courts also assist in dealing with this scourge that is inflicting our society?
Gender-based violence is indeed a matter of grave concern in our society, and especially here in South Africa. And the perception that courts are not doing enough, I do not believe that it is absolutely or 100% correct. One should be mindful of the fact that all the courts can do is to adjudicate cases based on the evidence that is presented. What is crucial is that the gathering of evidence, the investigation of cases, and the presentation of evidence before court by prosecutors should be of such a standard that the court at the end of the day would be able to make a finding that the guilt of the accused person has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is a very high standard of proof. So there is a requirement. Perhaps what needs to be strengthened is the investigation of such cases and the training of people who gather evidence, being the police, the training of prosecutors who have to present the evidence before court, so that at the end of the day, the court is able to make a finding of guilt. As far as sentencing is concerned, we are obligated, we have to rape and murder, because we deal mostly with, in gender-based violence, we deal mostly with rape and with femicide. Rape and murder are one of the offenses that have been singled out for harsh punishment by the legislature. And unless there are circumstances that warrant a deviation, we have to impose the sentences that have been prescribed by the legislature. So I do not understand the reluctance, because I, for one, I do not have that problem of sentencing. In fact, when life imprisonment was introduced, when we were given life imprisonment in the regional courts, I think in KZN I was the first magistrate to impose life imprisonment for a rape matter. So the best thing to maybe deal with the scourge that is plaguing the community, the communities, our society, is to impose sentences that will deter people from committing such types of offenses again. But it all starts with proper presentation of evidence. Because once evidence has been presented properly before you, and there's no other court that can differ with you, then your conviction and your sentence will stand, and it will have the desired effect.
Okay, thanks so much, CJ.
Thank you, MEC. Honorable Mogwera.
Thank you very much, CJ. Good afternoon, Ms. Mogwera.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Yes. Can you enlighten us, why is the Bar and Advocates for Transformation complaining that you do not start courts on time?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Even in the regional courts, there's the same complaint, and then you adjourn courts without any reasons, and that results in wasted time and delays.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, I was taken aback by that, by those comments. Let me just preface my response this way. the regional court, in the regional courts, things do not always run as smoothly as they do in the higher courts. We have many challenges. The one problem that I can state without any fear of contradiction, even in our in the regional court, that I would like to highlight is among those problems, there's this one problem that is as perennial as anything, of awaiting trial detainees being brought late. I don't know whether the minister is here. I'm glad if he's here because I know that he's also a minister of correctional services. Ever since I arrived in Pietermaritzburg in 2004, it has been a norm that we would, especially if you don't have a matter where you have people who are on bail or on warning, you would, as a matter of course, have to start court at about 9:30 or 9:45, because awaiting trial detainees are always brought late. This problem has been discussed in many case flow management meetings that I have attended. And I know that even regional court presidents from the the late Judge Njangas, who was the regional court president at the time when I was appointed, he was aware of that. This is something that has always been brought up, even with Mr. Nzimande and Ms. Max. It has been recorded in minutes. Add to that infrastructural problems that we have. Just the other day, about 2 weeks ago, I was in court when the recording machine exploded, just when we were about to start court. Sparks were flying all over. We were all terrified. We had to stop. The telephone lines have been down since last year. Last week, I had to give the prosecutor my cell phone to phone witnesses because there was a witness coming from Gauteng who had sent a message that he'll be arriving late, to check how far the witness was. Add to that the issue of the prosecutors who only get to meet their clients, the witnesses, on the date of trial, on the morning of trial. And we are talking about people who are coming to testify about very serious issues, very serious matters of rape, of murder, of armed robberies. You have to at least give them some rooms, give them some time to consult, speak to these people. It would not be fair to just throw them in the witness box. And at most of the time, what they do, they just give the witnesses statements that what I've learned, because they don't get sufficient time to speak to their clients, unlike their opponents who get all the time to consult with the accused persons. So those are the realities that we live with every day. And I find this criticism to be so unfair because let me also state that advocates are occasional visitors to our courts, the lower courts. And I'm sure you practitioners here will bear me out. Now, without specifics, because if I knew that on this particular day, advocate so-and-so came to my court and I couldn't start, I would be able to at least refer, because we are required to record reasons why we start late. So it's as far as I can explain it. I'm not saying that there has been occasions. Is it okay?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
And then can you explain the judgment that has been reserved for 16 months? What were the reasons?
Okay, I need to refer to my notes. There were 2 judgments, but I'm sure you are referring to the one of Chambler versus Koning-Kremer. This judgment, I'm told, and I accept that it was argued, as my recollection of the matter is that it was a trial wherein the defendant raised 3 special pleas. So the special pleas were argued, and what used to happen was I would take the file with me when a matter is reserved, because I reserve judgment. I would take it with me and to my chambers and place it on the pigeonhole on my desk. It will be in that pigeonhole, so it would be a constant reminder for me to deal with the matter, to write the judgment. With this particular judgment, I am not really sure what happened. I suspect that I might have left the file in court when I adjourned court, and that it went back to the general office. Now, in that general office, we've been experiencing this problem of files being misplaced and files going missing. Because this file was not with me. And there were other things, it's not like when you are in the civil court, you only have to do civil work. There were other things, like I would be doing my partly head criminal trials. For some reason, because I didn't have that reminder and it would appear I did not even record it in my diary, it just escaped my memory that I had this matter until I was approached by an attorney about, I'm sure it would have been about the 11 or 12 months later, when an attorney approached me, not to inquire about this file, because I had written a judgment in another matter, which had been reserved for less than, I'm sure for 2 months. This attorney, when she came to me, her name is Ms. Zama. Ms. Zama said, Ms. Mogwera, I'm coming to see you about the judgment of Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Maharaj, in my office. Mr. Maharaj was surprised that you have given judgment in my matter that you reserved 2 months ago. But there's this judgment that has been outstanding for almost a year now. I was taken aback. And I asked him, I even said to it, this is the place where I keep my reserve judgment. As you can see, the pigeonhole is empty. Because as far as I know, I've dealt with all my judgments. So we went with her after I had satisfied myself that that file was not in my office, to the general office, where I asked them to look for the file. Where the file was supposed to have been filed, it was not there, it was missing. And they told me that it could happen that the file has been, because it's already been caught, it has been put somewhere in the dungeon where the files for matters that have been finalized are kept. So I insisted that they should go to the dungeon and look for the file. Needless to say, they did not find the file. When they didn't find it, after a week or so, I decided to contact the attorneys. I told them that I have encountered this problem. I was surprised that they did not even remind me throughout this period about this judgment that was outstanding. But I asked them to reconstruct the file for me, which they did. It was around, when Ms. Zama came to see me, it was around the end, towards the end of November. So in December, around when they were about to close, I inquired again. I had not yet received the reconstructed file. In January, that would be January of 2020, I was invited again by the JP to act. Then I went to act. When I came back, it's only then, it was around March that I got the file. Now the challenge that I had in March was that there was COVID, and because of COVID, we could not work optimally in the office. From time to time, the office would be closed. I did not have a laptop until very recently. I only had the desktop, and all my research I could only do in the office. Be that as it may, in April, during the lockdown, I sat and I wrote that judgment and I delivered it electronically. This is something that I regret. I know that I ought to have been, to have exercised more care, but it's not the norm. Something that was just unfortunate to have happened as it happened.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, Ms. Mogwera.
Thank you, Honorable Mogwera.
Chief
Honorable
Justice,
Nyambi,
Chief
is
Justice,
there a follow-up?
yes.
Is that the follow-up? I think follow up and then put whatever question you would otherwise have put to her so that I delete you here.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Chief
you.
Justice. Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sepe.
I just wanted to, one of the issues raised about the judgment, that the two judgments that have been outstanding, one for 16 months and the other for 5 months, they don't appear in your questionnaire.
Oh,
And I know that your questionnaire was completed a while ago.
okay.
Why were they not included?
Okay, my understanding, let me indicate this. I got the nominations. You'll see that I got 3 nominations. They are all dated the 11th of December. In actual fact, the only nomination that I got on the 11th of December was that of Advocate Fleming. The other 2 I got on the 12th, the morning of the 12th, the one from Mr. Kunene and the other one is from BLA. That's when I decided that I'm going to avail myself and apply. So it was on the eve of the closing date. So I completed the forms in haste. Be that as it may, there is, if I refer you to the application itself, I think it is paragraph 9. It says, it speaks about experience when acting as judge. I misunderstood that. My understanding of it was, what was required for me was to indicate outstanding judgments, partly heads and others while acting as judge. So it did not occur to me that I should indicate regional court matters. That is why I did not. I'm sure you, if you can look at the questionnaire, you'll see that. It says while acting as judge. So I did not really think I should be indicating regional court matters. There's also, I did not even mention partly head matters. I had partly head matters in the regional court. There's also where it says cases that were overturned on appeal. It was also saying while acting as judge. So at that time, I was not aware of any matter of mine in the High Court that had been overturned on appeal. That is the only reason why I did not disclose them, not because I was trying to hide them or to be dishonest. In any event, it will be ludicrous to think that throughout the 20 years as a judicial officer, I would not have had any matter that was overturned on appeal.
Thank you. My second question related to the issue of your experience in civil matters. In your questionnaire, you do mention that most of your matters that you have dealt with are in the criminal court. Do you think that the amount of civil matters that you have done is enough to enable you to take on the function as a judge in the KZN High Court Division?
Commissioner, if I combine what I've done, the bit that I've done in the High Court with my experience in the regional civil court bench, I think I can be up to speed with the work in the High Court. As I indicated, I love to do research. I like to apply myself. I enjoy challenges. I believe I'm driven. I'm a hard worker. I think I'll be able to manage.
Thank you, Ms. Mogwera. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sepe. Honorable Klaba.
CJ, I'm covered by both Magwanisha and Ms. Sepe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable President. Well,
CJ.
it looks like the president is not there.
CJ, I thought you mentioned Nyambi earlier. I don't know if you skipped Nyambi and myself.
Can you imagine? Oh, that was because I went to
Commissioner Sepe.
Commissioner Sepe and stretched there, and then I skipped you. Thank you so much. You are here, you are not scratched. Honorable Nyambi?
Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Commissioner Singh. It's in relation to the very same question of advocates for transformation. With the hindsight now sitting here, don't you think it was going to be in your favor before it's being raised here, because you are aware about the issues that they are raising and you've got a better understanding, to start by correcting what is wrong in your responses?
I don't quite follow, Mr. Nyambi.
The issue of reserve judgments, the issue of starting court late, adjourning early, and it's part of what AFT it's raising.
Oh,
So don't you think sitting here, because now we are aware what happened in relation to the judgments and the issue of the courts, before we can raise it? Because if it was not raised, it's something that was not going to be discussed. Do you agree?
are you asking whether I should have responded to it before you asked me?
Yes, corrected it so
Corrected
that
it by way of maybe a written response.
no explaining it.
I didn't, I've been observing that with others, these things have to be elicited. I knew that you are going to ask me about it. I didn't expect that I have to come up with it, because nobody asked me whether any issue, even the CJ or the JP. Or if there's
But in
anything.
simpler terms, do you agree what they've written that is correct? Your response is not correct about the paragraph they're mentioning.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I agree.
Thanks, Ms. Mogwera. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Honorable Nyambi. And Honorable Singh, it's your turn now.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Ms. Mogwera.
Good afternoon, Mr. Singh.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on these reserve judgments, and I see you've attempted to give us a reason for the 16-month delay on the one. Now, the other one was also delayed 5 months, and I don't know when it was delivered. That's the Saras Peramal versus Hemeline Chetty. How long did it take? How long did it take you to deliver that judgment? Because it was 5 months at the time when it still had not been delivered.
The judgment was delivered in April. Both judgments were delivered in April of 2020.
So how many months would that be after the matter was first heard?
The matter was heard, the quantum matter. It was, maybe perhaps I should just give the whole background about this matter, Mr. Singh, if you allow me. This,
I think briefly, ma'am.
no, I'll try to summarize. This was a defamation trial. On the 11th of March, the issues were separated, issues of liability and quantum. On the 11th of March, 2019, I gave judgment on liability for the plaintiff. Then the file had to be taken back to the general office because I was finished with the matter. On the 29th of April, that's when the parties came to set it down now for quantum hearing. At that time, when they set it down without me knowing that it was set down for quantum on the 29th of April, because the 29th of April that year I was acting in the High Court. That is the 29th of April when they came. And because I was not there, they adjourned it to June, the 14th of June. On the 14th of June, when they came, I was hospitalized. I had undergone surgery. And then they adjourned the matter to October. In October, when the matter came, the file was missing. That is when I asked that a duplicate file be prepared, because they had prepared heads of argument for heads of argument to be put in that file and my judgment on liability. My intention was I would write the judgment because they had written quite substantial heads of argument. I said there's no need for them to argue the matter because they asked me if I had gone through the heads. I was satisfied that the heads were sufficient for me to decide the matter. And the duplicate file was opened. And then when I had to write judgment, it was in November. A need arose for me to refer back to the pleadings and to the notices, because especially when it comes to the issue of cost, I couldn't find the file. The file had to be reconstructed again. And I only got to get this again in March of the following year after I had acted in the High Court. And I also wrote the judgment in April. And the judgment was given in May.
No, thank you. Well, there seems to be quite a problem about missing files, but anyway, we'll deal with that later on.
Let me expand this further. It is a big problem, Mr. Singh. On Tuesday this week, I got an email from the High Court because there's a matter of the divorce matter that I'm doing in the High Court that was supposed to proceed in January. For some reason, because one of the counsels was not available in January, couldn't proceed. It was adjourned to April. The beginning of April, I went to the High Court to deal with the matter, only to be told that the file is not there, the file was missing. I was apprehensive because of this experience that I've had with missing files in the regional court. And I ordered that we proceed anyway because they were going to bring application for my recusal, and we dealt with the application and thereafter proceeded with the trial. After we had adjourned, after I'm trying to show this, to illustrate the point. After we had adjourned, I had very strong ways with this problem of missing file, that I can't have this in the regional court and in the High Court. And I directed my complaint to the registrar of the High Court. And I was told last week, the registrar sent an email informing me that the file was sent to you. I had never received the file because it was sent when I was on leave in January. And they sent me proof in a form of a copy of the register that the file was sent to me. And I saw that one of the assistant registrars in the regional court has signed for the file. The file was lying in the general office. It is only when I went upstairs to the general office to inquire about this file that it was given to me. It had been lying there since the 8th of January. So there is a problem.
Okay, ma'am, I'll accept what you said for now. The other thing is, I suppose, through you, Chief Justice, I suppose if I ask you why you did not indicate that you had matters taken on appeal in your questionnaire, item 9.4, you'll probably say, well, you thought it was when you were as an acting judge. Am I correct?
I had said that I thought that they were referring to when I was the acting judge, but I'm aware that there's a case which I only became aware of late, of State versus Kumalo, where my sentence was changed from life imprisonment to 20 years when I was acting. I was not aware of the matter at the time, Mr. Singh. I was not aware that my sentence had been reduced.
Yes, thank you, because that's the matter that I wanted to refer to, State versus Kumalo, because earlier on you said you are not afraid to give life imprisonment, but I see the full bench reverse that to 18 years imprisonment. I just wanted to say that and put that on record.
Yes, sentencing is it's a very difficult part of adjudication, Mr. Singh, and we differ. It can also be a very subjective exercise.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, Ms. Mogwera.
Thank you very much, Honorable
Chief
Singh.
Justice, sorry, Chief Justice, can I have a follow-up?
I'm trying to make out the voice.
Ms. Mshengu,
Yes, sir, MEC, please go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Chief Justice. Now, the issue of missing files is really troubling. Has there been consequences against those who, I would say, reckless?
You know, Commissioner or MEC, initially I thought that perhaps it's because we are still, we didn't have civil jurisdiction for some time, and perhaps our registrars and assistant registrars needed training. As a result, from the onset, one was very patient, and you thought these are teething problems which would disappear with time. But unfortunately, I don't think the situation is improving. We have discussed this in the case flow meetings with the relevant stakeholders. I know that there's a Miss or Mrs. Khan who used to attend our meetings. I heard even from my colleague who is now sitting on sort of permanent basis in the regional court that the problem is still there. He even tried to introduce a system of a register to try and monitor the movements of files. But even somebody who is my brother and colleague, recently we were talking about this, and I was saying to him, I have to go to the JSC and answer about this issue of missing files. And he said, and unfortunately, the problem is still continuing. So perhaps it's something to be looked into to give necessary training. I know that even when I was doing civil work full time, there would be instances when attorneys would come to ask for certain orders during motion proceedings. And when you ask for proof of service to the other side, because you would not be having it in your file, you'd be told by the attorney that, but I did serve and I did file on a certain date. I have a copy. They would even give you a copy to see, to show you that indeed there was proper service, but it would not be in the file. So it's really something that needs attention.
Thanks, Iche.
Thank you, MEC. Commissioner Barnard.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Ms Mogwera.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
It just occurred to me the fact that these cases in the other courts, other than the High Court, that were outstanding, was because you misunderstood the form. Are there any other, because these were raised by this organization, Advocates for Transformation, but are there any other ones that have not been raised that might still be outstanding or that were outstanding for very long periods that you can mention to the Commission?
No, not that I can think of, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, sir. Prof.
I'm covered, sir.
Thank you. KNSC.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I'm also covered.
Thank you. President.
I am covered, CJ, but perhaps I could give my colleague, Ms Mogwera, some advice that will help her never forget about a matter in which there's an outstanding judgment. Am I right, Ms. Oh, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, President.
When you sit in court, you have your notebook in which you take notes, not so?
Yeah, the problem with the Magistrates Court, President, is that we use mostly, we don't get these books that you get in the High Court. We use what you call P21 sheets. And I would write my notes and put them in the file.
Well, word of advice, just get yourself a Q-Choir notebook from Pick and Pay, from Checkers, anywhere. Write your notes there and make it a practice that when you leave court, you don't leave it there for someone to take back to your office. You take it yourself back to your office. That's your diary. And that's what will remind you that on such and such a date, I had this matter and maybe there's something outstanding I still need to go back and do there. And you'll never forget a case again.
I greatly value the advice. Thank you, President.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, President. Ms. Mogwera, I take it you're aware that sometime in 2018, I visited the Magistrates Court in Pietermaritzburg.
Yes, CJ.
And I also assume that you are aware I didn't find any regional court magistrate there.
CJ, I need to correct you. I was there.
Were you there as a regional court magistrate?
I even went to greet you because Ms. Munyamure had told me that you were in the office. You would be coming to the office. You came with the JP. You were in Ms. Munyamure's office, and I went.
Ms. Munyamure's office.
Yes, and then I went and I greeted you. We even spoke. And in all fairness to my colleagues, I believe that they were there.
No, I asked.
No, you were misinformed, JP. My colleagues were there. I remember very well that after I had spoken to you, I even went to brag to them that I've been with the CJ. I've just spoken to the CJ now.
Yes.
And then they said, one of them asked, do you think he'll even come and see us here? And I said, I doubt he would rather visit the regional court president, not us.
I wonder what happened because I had specifically asked to see both district court magistrates and regional court magistrates.
No, you were missing.
I accept your word that you were there.
Yes, CJ.
I was told at the time, that there was a tendency for regional court magistrates not to be there on Fridays from morning until knock-off time.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
All right.
Even if some of them leave, I can vouch that there are those who would be there from 8 to 4 every day.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, ma'am. You're excused.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you.